Hello, my name's Willie T, and this is CybinSpace, where we're going to be integrating psilocybin into the mainstream. We got a great panel of guests to discuss some amazing stuff with us today. We have Jason Burge in the house with the Psilocybin Assisted Therapy Association. We have James Gilbert with Argyle Payments. We have Jeanette Small with Lucid Cradle. And the infamous Paul Stanford with the Hemp and Cannabis Foundation and Cannabis Common Sense. We have some great friends with our Zoom in today too. We have Heather Shelton aboard. Say hi, Heather. And Janet Champagne. They're going to be joining us for this conversation on legalization and decriminalization and what that means. What does that mean, Paul?
Well, decriminalization means there's still laws and you can be arrested somehow. And I think that's kind of what we have with psilocybin therapy. Legalization means you can grow it yourself, you can possess it wherever you're at. We don't have that in Oregon, at least not yet. And so that's the difference.
Definitely. Jeanette, could you discuss, what our model is here in Oregon and how it kind of works?
Well, there's a lot to it, but there are a few things that I would like to mention. First and foremost, it is not actually a therapy model. We have an adult use model as of right now. Jason might be able to shed some more light on that.
Yeah, I'd say from the perspective of folks that are looking to come to Oregon or use psilocybin for mental health and that approach, understanding that difference could really be the decision on whether or not they even want to come or they want to use the substances or they want to come to Oregon. Because there is a lot of misconception around, are they receiving therapy, what's going to happen, and a lot of questions that we get where people are asking, they're like, oh, I want to come to Oregon because it's legal. And so there's a constant education and re-educating people that, yeah, we're here, but there is that difference and that people need to self-educate on what that means for them. And unfortunately, it also means that it could deter them from getting mental health. So for those people that are really looking for mental health, this can be a very important issue because it could affect their livelihoods or their concerns about the livelihoods.
Right. And right now there are only two states that, one has two states that have legalized, but Oregon is currently the only model that's actually out and being represented in the state. Colorado's coming up next. They, of course, did a decriminalization that was not set up for a model, but then they passed a legalization law, and now that's a model. Recently, Governor Newsom in California, he had turned down the model because it was not quite the therapy model, as some are calling it. And these, have lots of problems, like lots of hurdles that we have to overcome. One of these hurdles we got to overcome is, payment processing and stuff. Because it's still federally banned. James, can you enlighten us a little bit on this?
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me, Willie. And I'm James Gilbert, and with Argyle Payments, and we specialize in payment processing solutions. And for us, we work with a number of banks within our network to help achieve legitimate above-board solutions for this industry. And so we're the first to be able to offer payment processing, again, above board, and be able to help help facilitators and service centers get set up, and more importantly, maintain those accounts without them having to worry about account closures due to the type of business that they, due to the products and services that are offered. So
nice.
It's awesome.
I bet you there was a lot of issues when it was coming up to it on defining what a psilocybin service center is compared to what a facilitator is, and what a manufacturer of mushrooms are, and how this kind of works with the legalities of working with banks. Have you had any issues with this, Jeanette?
Oh my goodness, have I? It has been such a challenge. It's, you're supposed to open a business account with a reputable bank. You're supposed to keep your books the right way. And then you go to a bank and you say, I would like to open an account for my legitimate business. And they go, oh, no, we don't do business with your sector. This is too high risk for us. And I've been finding myself in this situation where, well, I absolutely want to follow the rules and regulations, but who is out there willing to work with us? So I'm really grateful for the work that Argyle is doing, because they're enabling for this industry to evolve into something respectable, something that the customer can really appreciate and trust.
Yeah, yeah. So it's been a thing. Paul?
You know, I've actually had a lot of experience starting back in 2007 with medical marijuana banking. I've had my accounts closed 20 different times. Once, they closed 26 accounts at once, some of them political, some of them business, some of them personal. So in those 20 different bank closures, 18 times, they would not tell me why they were closing my bank account. They said, we don't have to tell you why we're closing it. When you sign up for your account, it says we can close your bank account for no reason at all. Only twice have they said it's because you help medical marijuana patients. So obviously I have 20 different stories, but I won't bore you with them right now.
And that's the same thing I came into, same cannabis space. And when I was coming into this, a lot of the classes, I was seeing my fellow classmates, and, you know, everybody's, well, I'm just going to go get my Venmo set up. And, you know, I'm trying to explain, you know, that the federal laws do not allow for the situation to happen. You know, we might have it legalized here in Oregon under a regulatory model, but, you know, most banks are still running with, you know, FDIC insurance and stuff, and having to deal with the federal level of being, you know, on point.
I'm not sure how it's working with psilocybin facilitators, but I know in the medical or in the marijuana industry, there's only a few banks that will accept accounts. The Marion and Polk County School Credit Union, or MAPS Credit Union, a couple of others, they charge a $500 application fee and a $500 a month account fee. So it's much, much more expensive to do banking. In marijuana, I'm sure you're going to run into the same issues with psilocybin industry.
So, Jeanette, the model with psilocybin allows for a facilitator who then goes to a service center, who then, you know, receives, their client receives psilocybin. Does the facilitator do anything with psilocybin, you know, physically, or?
Well, technically speaking, the facilitator is not allowed to handle the product at all.
Okay.
They're there to interact with the client, to provide safety and support in a non-directional manner, to be able to screen the client, to prepare them, go through the necessary preparation process, and then help them with the integrative process. However, the service center itself is the entity that offers the psilocybin product to the client. So the facilitator never handles the product, and really, you know, our stance on it is the banks should see that and recognize that this is not really, you know, a challenge for the facilitator.
Is that what you guys did over at Argyle? Or who are you guys working with, the service centers, or are you working directly with the facilitators?
We're able to work with both, and you know what we were able to do is we of course did plenty of research on our end and looking at, you know, with the Oregon Health Authority, and you know a big portion of it too is that the facilitators as well as the service centers have been very much on board with presenting all the necessary data and documentation that we would need to present to our banking partners. Which allows us to establish the necessary credit policy, which then that's what leads to long-term processing, which is huge, because that's the most important thing. You want to, of course, get something established, but more importantly, you want to maintain that. And as long as which we've been able to demonstrate all of the legalities surrounding how the transactions are occurring appropriately, then from there our banking partners are comfortable and they're willing to move forward. And more will come online as time goes, and that's only a benefit to everyone involved, which is excellent.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I think, you know, building this framework from the ground up has been a great, you know, connecting service for so many people in this industry. You know, mushrooms and psilocybin tends to bring us together, and I'm really seeing that here in this space. Jason, you know, when somebody's seeking services, say from out of state or something, you know, what's some of the ideas or processes of making that happen?
Well, a lot of folks when they're you know, when they reach out, questions we're answering, they're looking for mental health, and so even the complexity when we talk about legalization and decriminalization for, outside of the facilitators, people looking for the mental health, and even the mental health professionals have a challenge because federally, the substances are still illegal. So that affects their licensure. And so you have these weird, so you can have facilitators can be licensed, but a mental health therapist, a licensed individual, can't practice their knowledge during these sessions. So everything's still working on, but it really centers around that decriminalization, and hoping that just as we move forward and having, like Argyle and James and I were talking of, that as this moves into like Colorado and there's more people that are like these new states are coming up, that they'll also think about some of these other business processes to make it easier. Because so much of the emphasis has been put on the facilitators and the service center folks to really move it forward. And so we're kind of just bridging, we're trying to connect everything through there. Where really it's about what's going to be the best for the folks that are seeking this help. And we're still working with that, and it's being creative, and it's educating, and creating the partners so that we can all collaborate around the same thing and learn from each other.
Definitely. Paul, what do you see coming down the pipeline between, what are some of the similarities you're seeing between the, blossoming, sporing out, mushroom industry compared to the cannabis industry?
There's a lot of similarities. They're both being against federal law, and the banking issues, of course, are a big one. Trying to work with federal law is still a challenge for the marijuana industry. And the federal law changes very, very slowly. So it's great to educate people, and that's obviously what we're trying to do here today.
Definitely. Well, let's bring in some of our Zoom members here. There you go.
My name is Jana Champagne. I'm a cannabis patient who happens to be a nurse, and I've been educating cannabis patients and medical professionals for about a decade. And here I'm down in Medford, so here in Oregon, I've been trailblazing a cannabis-inclusive autism care resource, being cannabis-inclusive care homes and retreat centers. I'm also a professor at John Patrick University. That's kind of my role, and so I just really see so many similarities between the psilocybin red tape and the cannabis red tape, and I'm just so encouraged to see that those of you trailblazing psilocybin, like Heather Shelton and those of you on the panel, are taking lessons from the struggles that we've had getting cannabis access and appropriate medical guidance for our patients, and ensuring we're upholding our medical ethics while also trying to figure out, all of the legislative rules. And I know Heather Shelton can speak more to this, as she's on one of the panels creating some of the legislative rules. So I may actually just let it switch over to her and let her talk more about that.
Hi, so I'm Heather Shelton, a newly retired nurse, actually. I think Jason was speaking about the challenges for some of us with professional licenses in addition to working in psilocybin. And after my experience as a nurse working in the cannabis world, I've decided that I was just going to retire my license so that I can fully participate in this, in our new psilocybin program. So talking about banking, we at Epic also ran into these challenges as far as having a service center and being unable to get business bank accounts as well. And we currently have a new structure where we have two companies, and one is our service center, and then one is where we contract with facilitators. And so that's given us a little bit of a way to have some banking and not have everything have to be in cash.
When it comes to, legalization, like here in Oregon, we seen, huge bursts for like Measure 110 and a lot of, misconstrues of what that means, have you guys had any experiences with, dealing with the, balancing what is regulated and, above board to what is not? Has anybody had any experiences with this?
Of course.
Oh, Jeanette?
So many experiences. So one of the challenges that I would like to speak to with the fact that we're in this transition of sort of decriminalizing, legalizing, the fact that we're trying to keep options open for us to figure out how to best provide services. You know, we don't really have best practices established yet. And so with that, a lot of voices are coming to the forefront, and it is difficult to discern which perspectives are more credible, which perspectives are the ones that the public should really be orienting to. There has been, I've at least experienced quite a few folks sort of trying to ride the trail, you know, with us and going, well, you know what, there's this legal framework, these guys are, you know, working on providing services in this regulated way in which we have all kind of voted for and agreed on, and well, you know, it's basically exactly the same thing as the underground offerings, and so it diffuses the message. It has been a little bit challenging to communicate to the public what the similarities and differences are between the things that are offered, you know, at different service centers, in retreats that might be out of the country, in the underground space. So we're still kind of developing all of this. This is part of the conversation that we're, you know, having.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that is, you know, I had a lot of experience with the underground and a lot of experience with legalization, especially in Washington State, and I've been working real closely with, you know, some of the board and some of the groups here that works here in Oregon. And I gotta say, to me, I really truly feel, you know, there is, you know, a partnership with the state in this aspect. Like a lot of the rules and structures and, you know, framework that they've designed, and I've talked with, you know, the head of the board too, they've designed it to be a little bit more open so that we can kind of figure out what that looks like at the end of the day, because this is going to be a slow rollout program. So, you know, it's one of these things where it's like, you know, you get in, you accept a partnership with the state, which then you have a partner in the state backing you, especially when it comes to a federal level. And in that partnership with the state, we design the framework. You know, if we just opt out of that framework and we're not working with them, then we're just working against them. And I think Oregon has really taken the ability to, you know, come together and work cohesively, which is kind of new in, you know, my personal aspects. Paul, what do you think about that? Have you had any experience with some of the psilocybin boards and stuff like that, or?
You know, I haven't. I haven't had direct experience with the psilocybin boards, but I've found, you know, the fact that you're licensed by the state has given you protection from federal authorities. I mean, federal authorities could come in and arrest you, but you can plead not guilty and go. So the prosecutors don't want to deal with that. So they're only going to go after someone who is definitely not in compliance with state law.
Yeah. What do you see, like, you know, in your opinion, what's the framework that's going to be kind of set up with the, you know, fighting the federal aspect to, you know, payment processing, banking and stuff? What's some of the, you know, ideas behind separating the two?
Well, the good news about the programs here is, you know, like mentioned, you know, the psilocybin sales are cash sales. You know, that's a cash sales element of it. And so because of that, with our banking partners, looking at it from, you know, being able to offer the therapeutic services and being able to offer, you know, at the centers, the room rentals and all of those aspects of it, those we can certainly support through the network, which has been great. And that's one thing that our banking partner was very, many of our banking partners, of course, are very strong about, is that they want to make sure that the sales are above board and everything is being done within the framework of the, you know, of the way that the program is currently set up, which is crucial.
When a client is coming in and they're going to, you know, take services with, say, a facilitator, how is that payment happening? Is the facilitator taking the whole payment? Is the service center taking things? Are we separating things? You were talking about different companies.
Yeah, we have a different model than it seems like other service centers, where we don't necessarily rent space out to facilitators. We actually contract with certain facilitators, and we have our own wait list, and we kind of fit, you know, we fit folks with their facilitators. So it's a little bit of a different structure than facilitators coming in and renting space. So we do, people are able to pay for the facilitation services online go through banking, and then for the purchase of their psilocybin and their service center facility fee, that's done in cash in the day of.
Okay. Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy the frameworks we have to, jump through on hoops. I mean, Paul, you know how many hoops we had to jump through with cannabis. It's crazy how many hoops we have to jump through to be able to bring these services to people, and making sure that people are getting the services that they need and they want, and the help that they need and want. Any thoughts on where you guys see legalization, decriminalization going on in the next states or anything like that?
I hope the states, as they're coming in, that they'll continue to learn. And that's where I really hope, is that, it's like, let's have Colorado learn from Oregon. And then the next states learn from the combined. Because we're kind of rolling through this process as we go, and there's going to be mistakes. And you mentioned like Oregon Psilocybin Services, like they are advocates for all of this, and they believe in all of it, and they want to partner. And so, what I'd say is just like the more that we all can collaborate and partner and be passing that information forward, we're trying to prevent the next states from having those same challenges. Because then, if the messaging gets clearer and it starts to really, get rid of some of the stigmatization, that's going to help with the legalization. That's going to help with just the general overall, the whole country looking at psilocybin versus just Oregon, where we have a lot more experience. So it's a long process, but the more that we can really collaborate and be moving forward on that, I think that will really help with that. And this is very bipartisan, and that's really encouraging to see that, of everybody supporting each other.
Mm-hmm. And I think the state has, whenever you do these type of things, there's always, open comments, where you can, submit your comments, submit your thoughts. I believe, Heather, are you on the RACs? Is that the group you're on, or what part are you on with the consulting with that?
I'm not actually at this time on any of those committees.
Okay.
But I do just want to follow up, Willie, that you had commented about the state, and I found everyone I've worked with at OPS has been so supportive. When I call and have a question, they're open to questions. They want to know what's happening for us and where we're finding little snags where we need support. And that's actually felt really nice. I mean, part of why I got involved in the beginning is because I had been witnessing what happened when we legalized cannabis recreationally and how the patients got left behind. So I felt really strongly that I wanted to be involved in this way, just to help create a program that's really serving everyone. So, yeah.
That's good stuff. Jana, what's the conversation going on with, you're still a practicing nurse. What's some of the conversations that are happening with nurses in this space?
Actually, just to clarify, I also retired my nursing license last year, and Heather and I retiring our licenses is just a reflection of how little understanding we really have at the nurse regulatory level in this state for anything alternative. They're very punitive and very retaliatory, unfortunately. And we are seeing a shift this year, and I'm actually very hopeful. We had a changeover of the Oregon State Board of Nursing Executive Director that occurred in September. So she's very new. She's only been there a couple months, but it's Rachel Prusak, who is a former State of Oregon representative, extraordinarily cannabis friendly. She actually introduced SB 3369 that dictated that nurse practitioners could certify for cannabis, along with the other additions that they made. And it also specifies that nurses can, in fact, educate cannabis patients. And so prior to that, there was a lot of gray area. And in 2019, we actually had to overcome a gag order that the Board of Nursing placed on all Oregon nurses, saying that we could not educate patients about cannabis, which is kind of ridiculous. It was an expansion of an omnibus law that specifically only applied to certifying physicians, and they expanded it to cover nurses. So it was kind of an abuse of power on their part. And so now that Rachel Prusak is there and she's cannabis friendly, we are working to get an interpretive statement of SB 3369 and really, really encourage heavily the nursing board to adopt scope of standards for nurses educating cannabis patients in Oregon. I mean, we're inevitably going to interface with them, being that we've had legal access here for 25 years. So it really is just encouraging them and reminding them that we are upheld to medical ethics that are not currently being followed in our mistreatment of cannabis patients in this state. And so that's, I think those are lessons that also transfer over to psilocybin. I think bringing medical ethics into the conversation, it's a big deal. I mean, we have ethics driven into us in nursing school and medical school. Do no harm. For nurses, it's do not administer an unnecessarily harmful medication, which means we're supposed to be doing a risk versus benefit on all of the options for a patient to treat. And we're not doing that. And in fact, I've written an article about how cannabis patients walk into the physician office, they walk out with a signature, and then they're sent to the dispensary. It's likened to going into a pharmacy and eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and no medical knowledge there at all. Very rarely is there anybody that has medical knowledge in a dispensary that can do things like screen the pharmaceuticals for interactions or understand what the research actually supports for that patient's condition. And we do have research supporting that when patients have really competent medical guidance, it improves their health outcomes of cannabis therapy. So all of those things are transferable to psilocybin as far as I can tell. The risk versus benefit and screening for risk factors and helping them to avoid them, care planning, which all of that comes really naturally for nurses.
Definitely, great points. And two, I see, this space, we always get asked too about the insurance, and if you can't really define, what the actual, treatment is, insurances are not covering this either. So, that's another huge area that we need improvement in on this space. And I know something about the cancellations too, because I am constantly getting canceled on accounts as well, Paul. I might have you beat on the 25 though there. No, I'm just joking. and I'm always asking that question to everybody too. When I get shut down in an account, and I say to the account, I've always messaged them, and they'll vaguely say, well, you violated our terms and conditions. You violated our community standards. And I'll ask what the community standard is. And it's the nature of your business. And we're just discussing psilocybin. We're just discussing cannabis. We're not actually handing cannabis out to anybody or handing psilocybin out to anybody. And they'll say, well, that, you can't do that. And I propose the question to them, what about church groups that are anti-cannabis? What about, police unions that are talking against that? You're not canceling their accounts, but you're canceling our accounts just because we're having, a positive conversation. And I think that's one thing we need to continue to have. And I am so thankful for every single one of you folks taking the steps you're taking and all the encouragement. And I just want to thank every single one of you guys. Paul, thank you. And
you're welcome.
James, thank you for the work that Argyle Payments doing. Jeanette pushing through with her facilitation and all the work you're doing, Jason. We love this. And this has been, CybinSpace.
This is the first episode, right?
First episode.
So you've done great for your very first
episode. Yeah. Give it a for our first episode. So this is our first episode of CybinSpace. You guys can keep tuned in for more. We're going to continue to have this conversation. We invite you to join the conversation. Tune in, bring your questions in, and also make sure to check out our Psilocybin Facilitators Association. You can check that out at pfatrade.com. And we look forward to integrating our true selves with our daily selves. You have a great day.